Time is a fragile resource. We trade it basically for every single activity we do in our lifetimes. So does Talal, the protagonist of the indie title Godstrike. You see, when it comes to indie games, especially those smaller scale, shorter ones, players are presented with plethora of various options. So how do you make your game stand out? You focus very hard on a niche and deliver a satisfying experience for that niche. So who's the target audience for Godstrike? Well, let's see. Ooh. Woo! You have to try harder, dude. I finished Enter the Gungeon.
A few moments later.
Okay, I'm fine. Fuck! Ah! Restart. This is the late review, Godstrike. This review is based on 11 hours of gameplay, finishing story mode 2 times, beating challenge mode, acquiring 86% of all achievements available in the game. So here's what I think. Godstrike is a boss rush twin-stick shooter. It's a very short game, as finishing the story mode for an experienced gamer should take about 1 hour, maybe 2 hours max. Of course, if you are less familiar with the genre, then it might take longer. Why is that? Well, boss fights in Godstrike are actually quite tough. This game is like if speedrun could hurt you. Too much. Okay, I guess I'm done. Ooh. Before talking about boss design, let's touch on the main feature differentiating Overpowered Team's game from other similar projects. You see, in Godstrike, time is your health. Each encounter starts with a set timer. When player takes damage, the timer is reduced faster. When the countdown reaches 0 seconds, the overlay changes, signaling that the next strike dealt to player's character will be fatal. This way, developers create an environment where players are forced to learn boss mechanics, but they cannot play too safely, as they risk running out of time if their damage output will be too low. Our protagonist, Talal, can equip various abilities and passive effects, which add new ways of approaching boss fights. There's a catch. Passives are free, but skills require spending some precious seconds from the time pool given for each boss. So, player is stronger, but has less time, which also translates to less health. An intriguing design choice. But it actually works. Players have to think and make hard decisions. It's especially meaningful in challenge mode, as bad loadout can end your run. Boss design is fantastic. There are only 10 bosses, but each one of them feels different. Every enemy has multiple stages of combat represented by the small squares above its health pool. We start with Tutorial, a well-designed entry boss. The fight has 3 stages. First phase is pretty easy. Boss uses one of 3 attacks. All are easy to avoid but require some movement from the player. This phase is not too challenging. It's used as a warm-up to what is going to happen next. Second stage introduces a lot of aggressive movement from the boss. Projectiles are harder to predict as Tutorial is constantly chasing the player. Then there is the last phase when the boss goes full charge mode. It's a good introductory fight. If you are interested in a more in-depth analysis of each boss encounter in the game, then check out my Bosses of Godstrike video. Link will be in the description. The boss design is pretty cool, as most fights introduce some elements in the first phases which will be expanded in the later stages of combat. They aren't very long, so dying doesn't feel discouraging. Players are motivated to try again, learn the patterns and get better. There's this awesome feeling of being overwhelmed at the start of some fights or certain combat stages. You might think, there is no way to beat this. It's unfair. But if you keep coming back, you will discover reliable ways of exploiting each boss. Then, defeating an enemy which killed you dozens of times feels satisfying. This is what I love in boss encounters. There's this one fight which I feel might be more of a roadblock than others. Mobus, the 4th boss. This freaky train not only requires solid movement and dodging skills, but also requires a decent accuracy. Fortunately, story mode allows for some cheesy loadouts, and after a couple of wipes it allows players to switch the encounter into easy mode. But you would be mistaken if you would have thought that easy mode is actually easy. The changes are minuscule. Enemies attack a little bit less frequent, projectiles are slightly slower, and that's pretty much it. So we arrive at the determining factor whether you will enjoy Godstrike or not. The game is quite hard. I really liked it as I seek challenge in my games, but most people, especially less patient gamers, might find it frustrating. That's fine. Oh, that's the shitty thing. I hated that ability in Cuphead. I don't remember which boss had it, but I hated it. Come on, die. Next phase. After finishing story mode, players might be interested in 3 additional modes. Arena is your basic, unrestricted, free fun course. Player can pick up an enemy to fight against and then is given access to every passive and all active abilities. The cool thing here is that we are not restricted to the list of 10 skills and passives. We get an expanded list featuring new abilities. It's a commendable addition, but I quickly found it boring as it allows for creating awfully overpowered loadouts. Challenge mode is the roguelike spin on the formula. Players start each run with 1 random ability, 1 passive and an affix relative to the whole run. Those affixes can be positive or negative, such as increased attack speed, reduced cost of taking an ability, reduced enemy movement speed. On the other hand, if player is unlucky, then things might get harder as enemies might deal more damage. Each challenge run consists of 5 encounters with progressively harder bosses. After each win, player unlocks additional random ability and passive. Sometimes players can unlock an event in between rounds. Event gives a chance at additional affix being added into the run. Of course, the affix might be positive or negative. Challenge mode is hard. Bosses tend to be more aggressive and sometimes might use attacks which you haven't seen in story mode. Also, there is no easy mode here. It took me about 5 hours to finally get my first completed run. This mode is very replayable as runs can differ vastly. Still, there is the problem of pool of only 10 bosses. An interesting addition to the mix is the seed number. Every generated random run has its number. If you like your run, the combination of affixes, skills and passives, then you can write down the seed number and later enter it to recreate the exact same run as you just had. I found that to be a great addition. The daily challenge is a single run available once per day. And that's the whole spin. I guess it's put there more as this pinnacle of randomized challenge. It's a cool addition, but realistically it is there just for bragging rights if you manage to finish it and for an achievement. Godstrike uses simplistic graphics, which is the right move if you are a money-starved indie studio. Visual design of bosses and combat arenas is also pretty standard, though I have to say that I really liked Cynadel and her arena. Sound and music are quite basic. They don't disturb the fun, but they are hardly noteworthy. While launching the game, players are informed that using controller is a recommended way of experiencing the game. As a controller hater, I played it on mouse and keyboard and I had zero problems with steering Talal. Controls are snappy and responsive. The only problem I have noticed are with the questionable default keybinds during skill selection. You cannot confirm your picks with mouse, which is such a strange choice. The game runs fine. I had no problems with crashes or frame rate issues. I had some issues with camera though. On some boss fights, camera stays a little bit behind everything that happens on screen. Mobus is a good example. This weird train has couple of movement patterns. The problem with camera is that it adjusts to the boss mini phase with a delay of around 4-5 seconds, which always throws player off. The same thing happens on third boss. The problem is that camera adjusts itself towards boss's movement mini phases instead of adjusting to the player position. Another camera problem is even more frustrating. You see, Godstrike does not use classic view from above the character. It's slightly angled and a little bit tilted, which gives player false sense of their character's position in relation to incoming bullets. On some occasions, you could say that you are 100% in the clear and it turns out that a missile hurts Talal, while there are also situations when you are surprised when an attack misses you. It's a problem. In such a fast and unforgiving game, it leads to frustration. So, my word of advice to the developers for the future: fix your camera angles. The main narrative of Godstrike is insignificant. Developers try to create and present lore of the game during the introductory cinematic. After the initial exposition, there is almost no story development. Each boss has a couple of lines of vague text showing before the fight, but that's it. The ending is also pretty vague. While I think that every game could benefit from fleshed out lore and decent plot, I can recognize when game puts more of its focus on a single gameplay related feature, which does not require strong narrative. That's the case in here. Small, cool feature to mention. There are 2 endings in Godstrike. If you are interested in how to unlock the second ending, check out achievement section of this video. This is the section where I check latest, most recent Steam reviews for the game. I just want to see what other players think about the game. At the time of making this video, Godstrike sits at a score of 71% positive reviews out of only 110 reviews. Wow, I guess I'll check all of them. First thing I had noticed while reading the reviews was the fact that Godstrike appeals to a certain type of gamer. If someone praised the game, the difficulty was used as a pro, not a con. Funny enough, difficulty is also the #1 reason given in negative reviews as to why people dislike the game. There are a couple of reviews which state that reviewers couldn't defeat the first boss. This is why it's crucial to inform potential consumer that your game is hard. Aside from that, people also did not like unreliable hitboxes and camera. Both negative and positive reviews compare Godstrike to Fury. When you look at positive opinions, you'll notice that a lot of them still acknowledge that the game has some problems. And I think it's important. Godstrike is not a pristine small project. It has various problems, but I guess that for majority of people who reviewed the game on Steam, it was still an enjoyable experience despite its flaws. I want to close this section with 2 specific reviews. This user claims that the first bosses of the game are easy. Therefore, the start of each new challenge run is boring. It's a weird argument. Yes, they are easier, but it's precisely because they are the early bosses. And you know, they are not the long fights. Another interesting point in here refers to the last boss and his weird, inconsistent hitbox. Yes, it's true, the last fight is very hectic and requires a lot of movement. It's infuriating to see that your projectiles miss the boss when you feel like they should connect. And it happens a lot of times, so I agree. This is the last review I want to show you. This player praises boss design but acknowledges that later in the story mode, players are able to cheese bosses, thus completely nullifying their design. I'm grateful that I found this review as I forgot about that part. Yes, if you know what you are doing, you can create a very strong, overpowered loadout in second half of story mode. Well, it's exactly what I did. In my opinion, if player is skilled enough to realize a combination of skills which would create a strong outcome, then they should use it. In challenge mode, it's very hard to get the ideal combination of passives and abilities, so player will have to learn boss mechanics there. I perceive challenge mode as a proper way of experiencing the game. Story mode is just an introduction. Yes? Yes! Godstrike hosts a set of 22 achievements. 10 of them are awarded for defeating each boss. 1 trophy is obtained by finishing game's tutorial, and I don't mean first boss. Then there are 2 separate trophies awarded for each ending. Yes, Godstrike has 2 possible endings. The common one is awarded for simply defeating last boss, but the harder ending plays out if you let your timer run out before progressing through Garodal's 3rd phase. Then you have to defeat his last phase without suffering any damage. It's actually really difficult. I thought that with my cheese loadout I will be able to cheat my way through the phase, but after trying for 4 hours I gave up. So this is one of the achievements that I haven't acquired. Another achievement which proved to be too time consuming for me was Unstoppable, which requires player to complete 5 consecutive daily challenge runs. Let me remind you, each day players get only 1 try. If you fail it, then you have to complete the next 5 fully randomized challenge runs over the span of next days. I know that there are ways to cheat here. Changing the date on your system allows you to try another run without the need to wait for a day. Still, if you get unfavorable affixes, then it's really hard to keep the streak. That's why I resigned from this trophy. And with that, I missed on the last one, which is awarded for getting all available achievements. Other than that, completing regular challenge runs awards an achievement. Killing a boss after timer runs out is rewarded. There's also a trophy for defeating a boss without any abilities or passives equipped. And then we have typical progression rewards such as get killed 10 times, use all skills, or gather 50 souls in total. Most of the achievements in Godstrike are quite easy, with the 2 that I gave up on representing a significant difficulty spike. I went back and forth thinking if Godstrike is recommendation worthy. This is a niche title, the game is short and quite difficult. In short, Godstrike is a boss rush game leaning heavily into bullet hell territory. It offers some replayability with its challenge mode based around roguelike mechanics and daily challenges. The story is negligible. Unfortunately, there are also some problems with camera work which might frustrate some players. Graphics and music are not impressive, but they don't have to be. This is an indie game, a title developed with a certain niche in mind. People who like challenges and tough boss fights. In that narrow niche, it works really well. Fortunately for me, this is exactly what I was searching for. There are only 10 bosses, but the encounters offer variety and challenge. For me, that's enough. This is a positive review, as I really liked being tested by various bosses in Godstrike. For most players, it's a skippable title, but for those few devoted boss fights enthusiasts, it's a recommendation. Hey, thank you for watching. If you liked it, then press thumbs up and maybe leave a comment. Subscribe for more videos. If you didn't like it, then let me know why is that. I'm interested in all opinions. My question to you after this video is: what are your requirements for a short video game to be deemed as acceptable purchase? So that's all from me. Bye.